Hey everyone, hit the subscribe button and drop your comment below. We want to hear what you think. It helps us make ever cooler content. Today we're diving into the wild story of the Soviet Katusha, rocket launch and weapon that blew the minds of the Germans during World War II. The Katusha, the Soviet rocket launcher that shook the world. In July 1941, World War II is raging, and the German army is steamrolling through Soviet territory. The feeling unstoppable until boom, a barrage of rocket rains down off train station in Orsha, turning into a fueling nightmare in seconds. This was the Katusha, a Soviet rocket launcher that didn't just destroy tanks and troops, it crushed the enemy morals. The German called it Stalin organ because of the ear howling sound its rocket made as they screamed through the air. So what made this weapon so specially? Why were the Germans so stunned when they got their hand on one? And how did a country under single pop of creating something this devastating? In the deep dive, I will spill beans of the shock the Nazis, reveal the Katusha big secret, and give you a front row seat to one of the most epic stories of World War II. So, dream of rocket power. The Katusha story kicks off on the 1930s, when the Soviet Union was hustling to beef up its military. Back then, an idea of rocket wasn't new. Think 4th of July fireworks, but was deadliner. In 1933, the Soviets set up a special research institute to work on rocket weapons. They called it the Reactive Research Institute, or RNI for short. The goal? Build something the cold rain destruction on the battlefield like nothing else. But here where things get messy. The Soviet Union in the 1930s was a tough place to be scientist. A lot of the folk working on this rocket got caught up the Stalin's purges. Some were thrown in jail, others were executed. The guy in charge of the rocket program, Marshal Tukhachevsky, got arrested in 1937 and the project to a hit. The Soviet government liked to pretend one genius invited the Katusha, but the truth is it was a team effort, dozens of engineers working together, even as their colleagues were being dragged away. Despite the chaos, they keep it up. By November 1939, they had a working prototype, the BM-13, that rocket launcher that would become the Katusha. By June 1941, just days before Germany invaded, they had 6 test models ready to show off the Soviet brass, including General Georgy Zhukov, the big shot of the Red Army. When Zhukov and his team saw the Katusha, they weren't exactly impressed. Picture a clunky truck with a bunch of metal rails bolted on the top, looking like something you find in a junkyard. It didn't scream game changer, but then they fired it. 2 launchers let loose in salvo, and holy cow, the target area was obliterated. Building fake tanks, everything reduced to rubble in seconds. The noise was different. The smoke was thick and the ground shook. Zhukov knew the war was looking at something special. On June 21st, 1941, and day before the Nazi invaded in Soviet Union, the Katusha was greenlit into production. By the end of the month, they had a battery of 5 prototypes and 2 brand new launchers ready to roll. The stage was set for one of the most dramatic debates of military history. Fast forward to July 14, 1941. A Soviet battery of Katyushas led by Captain Ivan Florov, rolls up near the Orsha train station, aka German supply hub. The order comes down, fire, and let the 10-second 100 rockets scream into the sky, then clash down, turning the station into blazing inferno. Train, tanks, troops, gun. The German didn't know what hit them. Lucky for us, this moment was caught on film by Soviet cameramen, and you can still find the footage online. And like watching a disaster move, but it's real. The Germans were shocked. Survivors described a sound like 1,000 donkey braying at once, followed by a fall of the fire. They nicknamed the Katusha Stalin organs, because the rocket house sounded like a pipe organ from hell. This wasn't just about blowing stuff up. It was about scaring the daylights out of the enemy. So what made the Katusha such a beast? It wasn't about precision. Unlike regular artillery, which you aim carefully, the Katusha was a spray and pray weapon. Its rockets were accurate, but they didn't need it to be. A single battery could blanket an area the size of a football field with the explosion. A weapon of anything caught in the open, soldier tracks, even supply depots. A Soviet artillery officer named Nadisev wrote about of Katusha strike in August 1941. His battery fired two salvos, one of German motorized unit taking a breath by a river, another at a group on infantry and tank nearby. Both targets were wiped out. It did what anti-artillery regiments could, Nadisev said. German prisons later confirmed the devastation. 128 rockets in one salvo could shred a whole unit, leaving survivors too stunned to fight. The psychological impact was huge. The rocket hit all at once, creating shockwaves that could knock you out even if you were hiding in the trench. The noise alone was enough to make soldiers freeze in terror. One German officer, Gustav Seydlitz, wrote, "It was like the world was ending, fire everywhere, and that god-awful sound." The Katusha looked basic, but it was masterpiece of engineering. The launcher was just a truck with rail to guide the rocket. The real magic was in the rocket themselves, called M13s. Each one had a warhead packed with explosives and a rocket chamber stuffed with 7 powder streaks, made of ballistic propellant, a mix of nitrocellulose and nitroglycerin. This streak looked like giant macaroni, with a hole in the middle to make them burn early. When the Germans captured some Katusha, they had no trouble figuring out the launcher or the rocket design. The rail, the frame, the propellant, it was all stuff they'd seen before. They used similar propellant in their big guns, and the rockets were exactly new tech. But there was one thing they could wrap their heads around, and it was the key to the Katusha success. A big secret, a pasta machine for war. Here the mind-blowing part. The German was stamped by a powder stick. These sticks were huge, 1.5 feet long, 1.5 inches wide, with a teeny 8 millimeters hole in the center. To make them, you needed a massive hydraulic press that could exert thousands of tons of pressure. In 1941, only Britain had pressed like that. Behind machines the size of a 4-story building, crazy expensive and a nightmare to run. The Germans knew the Soviets didn't have anything like that. So how were they churning out millions of these stick? The answer was the pure Soviet ingenuity. Instead of the fancy press, they used a screw press, basically a souped-up version of the machine that makes spaghetti. The propellant mix was fed into a screw that squeezed into a mold like dough and through the pasta maker. A heating jacket kept the mix at the right temperature, and out came of conditioned macaroni of propellant with they'd come to size and cool. It was a cheap, fast, and could be done in a small factory. The streak let the Soviet produce nearly 15 million sets of powder stick during the war. It meant that we could fire Katusha like there was no tomorrow, while the German couldn't figure out how to copy it. They tried, but without the screw press now, how they were stuck. Then, when the Katusha first hit the battlefield, it sent shockwaves all the way to Berlin. Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel, in his memories written while awaiting trial in Nuremberg, described a meeting where Hitler went ballistic on his intelligence chief, Admiral Canaris. "What is this Russia Flame Tower gun?" Hitler screamed, his face turned red. "Why didn't we know about it?" He was furious that German intel missed the Katusha development and gave Canaris 1 month to the capture, one for study. Canaris stayed calm, but he didn't screw it up big time. German spy had been watching the Soviet Rocket Institute, but when its leaders were arrested in 1937, they assumed the project was dead. Oops, that mistake cost them dearly. The German was desperate to get their hand of Katusha. They offered big rewards, medal, promotion, even long vacation for anyone who could capture one. They even sent elite SS units and the saboteur led by Otto Skorzeny to hunt them down. But Soviets weren't messing around. The Katusha was top secret, guarded like a Fort Knox. A special order from a Soviet high commander said every launcher had a heavy protection, and if there was a chance of capture, it had to blow up. Each track carried explosives in the cap for just a purpose. Captain Florov better learned this in Handaway. In October 1941, they were surrounded by Germans. Rather than let the Katyushas fall into enemy hands, Florov and his men blew them up, and themselves along with them. But the Germans got lucky early, in August 1941, when they captured a launcher. According to Field Marshal Erich von Manstein, he was tired of where he found out his own aide had stolen the wheel for the staff bus. In mites here there, Germans never made their Katyusha. Not true. By 1943, Czech engineer working for the Nazis built a knockoff called an 8mm and centimeter Raketen basic of the smallest Soviet BM-80-24 launcher. They didn't just copy it. They made it better in some ways. They doubled the number of rockets per salvo from 24 for 28 and moved the ignition system to make it more reliable. The coolest upgrade, they angle the rocket fins slightly, making the rocket spin it fight. This cut down of the wobble causes by uneven propellant burning. Though their rockets were more accurate than the Soviet ones. The Soviet Notsen and in 1944 start making their own rocket with the angle fins, called TS-46 and TS-47. But here they catch. The German version never went big. They only made a few batteries and about 15,000 rockets. Why? Their own naval warfare rocket launchers were more accurate, even if they didn't pack the same psychological punch. Plus, the cuddle cracked the Soviet pasta machine trick, so they struggled to make enough rocket. Let's talk dollars and cents, or rather ruble and Reichsmark. The Soviet Union was a raw shape during the war. Factories were moved to the Ural mountain, resources were tight and work was stretched thin. They managed to chart out Katusha like hotcakes. The screw press was a game changer, cheap, small, and fast. And press could make thousands of powder stick a day, and the Soviets set themselves up in multiply factory. This let them fire rocket like that was no limit, which was a huge advantage when everybody countries. The German, on the other hand, were stretched thin too. Their naval warfare rocket needed precious material and more complex manufacture. Copying the Katusha screw press stage was beyond them, so they could match the Soviet output. Economically, the Katusha was a slam dunk. It did more damage for less cost. One salvo could replace an hour of artillery fire, 7 times ammo, and less soldier. The Katusha wasn't just a war machine, it became a symbol, named after a popular Soviet song. It was a morally booster and soldier and civilian alike. After the war, it showed up in movies, books, and even propaganda posters and reminded Soviet grit and ingenuity. But behind the legend were real people, engineers who risked everything, workers and who toiled in the true conditions, and soldiers who died to keep the Katusha out of enemy hands. For me, Katusha is a story about thinking outside the box. The Soviets didn't have the fancy stage, but they found way to make a world-class weapon with they had. The pasta machine idea, pure genius. It's a reminder that you don't need $1 billion to solve a problem, just a good idea and a good guts to make it happen. It's also about a teamwork. The Katusha wasn't the work of one guy, it was dozens of people, many of whom never got credit. In today's world where we're talking big challenge like climate change or supply chain issue, local war, the Katusha show us what possible when people pull together. The Katusha screw press is a lesson for startup and inventors. You don't always need cutting-edge tech to win. Sometimes tweaking something simple, like a pasta maker, can change the game. Today, tech world is full of examples. Think how companies like SpaceX cut cost by reason rocket, or how 3D printing is making manufacturing cheaper. Economically, the Katusha show how stretch dollar. The Soviet cuddle effort wasted project. So they focused on the worker. Modern businessmen and governments can learn from this focus of efficient, scalable solution instead of flashy, expensive one. In a world where budget are tight, that's a big deal. The Katusha story is a wake-up call. Ingenuity and teamwork can overcome any obstacle. Want more stories like this? Hit the subscribe button and leave your comment. Tell us what blew your mind about the Katusha or what the World War II topics you want to hear about. Your feedback keeps us going. Thank you for sticking with me through the epic tale. Don't forget to subscribe. The drop comment below. What you take of Katusha? Want to hear about wartime legend? Thank you so much. Bye bye.